Oh, we finally got ourselves a good league. Finally, after the abomination that was Trial of the Ancestors. In my opinion, Path of Exile's worst league to date. Oh, let's just make a league where the best build for it does 0 damage. Good idea for a league. It was terrible. I hated that league mechanic. Good rewards, but I hated the league mechanic. I thought it was stupid. And I think we are owed some in-map, map juicing mechanics. And that is exactly what we got with this new 3.23 Affliction League. You dive into this weird little like jungle area within your map. You collect these wisps. You kill a bunch of enemies. Looks really interesting. Looks really cool. These wisps, then you take them out of this jungle and you use them to empower your map. So they give you like item quant, item rarity, and like increased currency drops. Looks really, really fun. And it just looks like a combination between like Sentinel, Delirium, and a little bit of Scourge, which I think is a great idea for a league. It looks really, really fun. And then you can see here, these empowering the enemies, giving them quant and rarity and currency bonuses. The first thing that you're going to notice is 3 new ascendancies. That's right. Now, these aren't from a new class. These are in addition to the class that you have. We have 3 here. And I want to talk about some of the interesting things that come from this new ascendancy. So we have the Warden here. What's really cool about the Warden are these tinctures. So these tinctures are going to apply to your weapon, and they're going to give you different sort of bonuses. And they're also going to increase the effect of your flasks, according to this ascendancy. But yeah, you're going to get these tinctures here, and they are going to buff you in really strong ways. So here you can see this one has withered debuffs for 2 seconds on enemies that are in full life. And then I'm going to show the one that gives Ignite Conflux. Here's one that gives you Culling Strike, but it also gives you like a Headhunter sort of buff. So that one's Steel Power Charges. This is all damage can ignite and 4% chance to gain Onslaught for 10 seconds on Killing Blow. And you use the wisps that you get to purchase a lot of these things. So yeah, I mean, that just looks like a really fun way to include some new build diversity and ways to build your things out. I like the idea of like these tinctures. I think that's kind of cool, like coating your weapon with certain oils. And then we have the Ascendancy, the Warlock. And this one, you bring these corpses that you can either spawn. So you can spawn like a Hydra. You can spawn like one of these things. You can spawn them, or you can blow them up, I guess. But you also, once you consume them, you get the you get less damage taken from that type. And also you damage more to that type, which is kind of interesting. Now, I think the most interesting thing about the Warlock is that you get this blood magic plus 50% increased life reservation efficiency, and spells are going to give you added physical damage to 75% of the life cost. So the idea being you really want to spend as much life as possible to get all that added physical damage to whatever thing you're using. I think that could be really, really fun to use. This is a class that I'm very interested in. You also have these marks here. One of the marks that it gives you is it makes the enemy not deal any damage for the latter half of its duration. So that could be really interesting for someone that's like, I don't know, pushing, and maybe that they want something that's a little bit stronger, but maybe a little bit squishy. Could be something to think about. Not really sure. I really think a lot of the power here is going to come from this life stacking ascendancy idea, where you're just going to get a shitload of fizz damage, which we know is the best damage to get because you can convert and do all sorts of fun things. And then the last one is the Primalist, which is a build your own ascendancy. And you're going to get these charms that you can buy. So they kind of steal a modifier off the tree somewhere, or off an ascendancy. This one giving you the Unstoppable plus melee chance. This one area damage and movement speed from the Raider. And this one with Profane Bloom. And there's a bunch of other ones. So this is probably going to be the most popular. And it's going to be a way to just like make builds even more powerful, especially when you factor in like Forbidden Flame stuff. It's just, there's so much power on the tree now that they give you. You can do so many different things. I'm not the biggest fan of fucking with the tree too much. I like the idea of you have to make really hard choices on the tree, and you have to let your gear fill in the pieces. But it seems like they've moved away from that philosophy, because a lot of people don't like that philosophy. Maybe they're doing that in PoE 2, and they're moving that more to PoE 1, where everything is a little bit more amorphous, and you can make builds a little bit easier and make them how you want. So I imagine this is going to be the most popular new ascendancy. And you also get a little backpack. So, I don't know, if you want a little extra inventory space. Pretty interesting. All of these unique look like assholio, bro. These look terrible. Terrible. That's Affliction. The other big thing is the return of Ultimatum. My favorite league mechanic. This is by far the most fun. And I can't wait to play some Ultimatum. I'm going immediately into Ultimatum, speccing into it, and we're going to be blasting. Finally, in SSF, I can get myself some of those Trial Master uniques that I haven't been able to get, like the Shield, maybe the Hate Forge, the Blood Sacrament knife thing. I'm super excited to finally bring back Ultimatum and just fucking get into that circle and overcommit to certain things and hopefully lose some big items. Because the most fun thing is when you lose. When you lose the items, oh, that's super fun. And more shitty ass uniques though. For some reason, they're making a lot of dumb uniques. I think the biggest thing that everyone is talking about is the new gem system. Alt quality and enchants are now gonzo, okay? They removed enchants. They removed all the alt qualities, which is crazy. It's crazy they did that. That's a huge change. And they've kind of added a lot of the enchants to the gem itself, or they added like the more popular qualities to the gem itself, like the alt qualities. They just kind of removed that so you can kind of get to the meat of your build a lot faster. You don't have to worry about farming enchants or farming heists to get the alt qualities. You can just farm lab quickly and hopefully at level 30 get the gem that you need to build into the build that you want. Yeah, and then we have all of these transfigure gems which drastically change the skill. So for instance, this turns zombies into like raining zombies or something that scales with minion damage for some reason. Firestorm now has 2 different variations where one is like a big bolt and one is like a bunch of little ones. We have Detonate Dead, where you can't use corpses that you spawn. You have to use corpses that are already on the map. I don't know how useful this is going to be. One thing to note is that 60% less damage with ailments on this one. If you can't use corpses you spawn, I don't know how effective that's going to be. And a lot of them are kind of goofy, at least the ones that they're showing here. This one's kind of interesting. There's a couple interesting ones. There's a couple goofy ones. I just hope that they do a good job and make like good ones. I just want like some good ones. Okay, I want like some skills that are actually like strong and can be useful, and you know you can scale into them. They're not just kind of like super goofy and wacky. And then also because of that change, they changed all of the skills. All the skills now have different qualities and different things that they do to them. I just want to talk about some of the ones that I think are the most important ones. And I do want to state, I am coming from more of an SSF environment, okay? The idea that I can just immediately get an enchant, that's not true for SSF. So for a lot of the time, if you got an enchant, you might make a build just because you got that enchant, right? You just don't have farming enchants in SSF is just not something that a lot of SSF players do. Sometimes they do. It depends. Some enchants, because they're weighted also, so you could just be in lab forever and never get the enchant, right? So it really is just a matter of it's just a matter of like an SSF environment, league start environment. Think of it in that way, and then we can start to understand how this change really does slightly change a lot of the meta, in my opinion. So some of the ones that I think are interesting. Arc got a little bit of a change here, where it no longer has chance to shock enemies or provides the increased ailments. It now has 50% more damage with hits and ailments for each remaining chain. So you're getting that enchant built into the Arc gem now, and it's also increasing the base crit chance, and you're getting +1 chain to the quality, right? So Arc has been significantly buffed for people that don't do the enchant stuff, right? Something to think about, I think, as like a league starter. Arc is a really fun skill to use. Arcane Cloak got a buff effect, which is nice because it's not buffing. Arcane Cloak doesn't buff itself. It buffs another skill. So this is going to be a nice little damage increase, but you do lose skill effect duration, which kind of hurts in a lot of these skills. Ball lightning has changed a little bit, so maybe we don't need to change the base radius. So maybe you don't need to run a GMP. Maybe you can just run an LMP. Maybe you can get damage that way. I'm not really sure. Berserk got nerfed, which hurts. You're losing attack damage, but you're getting cooldown recovery rate. Blade Flurry is getting 5% added, 5% more damage with damage per stage. So it looks like around a 30% buff, at least from what I've seen. Some people say it's even higher. I'm not sure. Blade Fall is adding another volley, which is interesting. So it's going to volley twice. Plus, you're no longer getting the leaves fewer lingering blades on the ground if you don't cast a spell yourself. Something, I don't know. You lose a lot of the crit, but you gain extra volley, and it's going to leave the same amount of blades. So that's something to think about. I don't know. I'm not really a big BFBB guy. They buffed Bone Shatter, which is kind of outrageous. So instead of giving duration, it gives you 1% more damage per trauma. You're losing Divergent Bone Shatter. The trade-off, I don't know if it's worth it, but that looks pretty fucking good, especially as a league start. It's pretty insane they buffed Bone Shatter. The Brand Recall change is really nice because now you get the cooldown recovery rate as a quality. Burning Arrow got a buff in terms of Ignite. It does now 20% more damage with Ignite. I'm very interested in doing a Burning Arrow build just because it was one of the best builds back in the day. I would love to try to bring it back. Is 20% more damage with Ignite enough? I don't know. I need to see the numbers. Crackling Lance is one of the big winners here. 10% more damage with hits and ailments per intensity. Okay? That's a 40% more damage increase. You get 4 stacks of intensity. Bada bing, bada boom. Huge. Huge. For a skill that already does some of the highest damage in the game, it just got buffed 40%. Very high on my list for League Start. Detonate Dead got buffed because now you have the chance to detonate an additional corpse built into the skill. It's unbelievable. It's just probably the fastest build to get going right now in the game. Now, Discharge, I'm not exactly sure. I would love someone to correct me if I'm wrong, but giving 15% more AoE per charge consumed seems outrageous because can't you get to like 30, 40 charges or something with Discharge? I think you get to like 30 something charges. I don't know. It seems outrageous to me. It seems outrageous, but I don't know. We'll see. Divine Ire got a big rework. This one looks really good. It's now a max 10 stages, I think, instead of 20. It's doing a little bit more damage. I was doing a lot bit more damage to kind of compensate for the change in charges, I guess. There's no more less damage while channeling. Seems like a nice skill. Seems like a good hard-hitting skill. Earthquake got a little bit of a buff. How much did I write here? 30% buff on on Earthquake. The problem with Earthquake is mainly you can go Bleed or you can go Ignite, right? And Bleed is, I don't know if 30% is enough of a buff to make a Bleed Earthquake build worth it. And if you go Ignite, I don't know if it stacks up against a lot of other gear because you have to get Ignite chance. Earth Shatter is also another one I'm not really sure. So it's giving you 1 Fissure, which is like a Helm enchant. And it's adding that to the gem, that 1 Fissure, which is 3 spikes. Now, I don't know how that translates into damage. Is that a 20% buff, a 10% buff, a 30% buff? I'm not exactly sure. Ensnaring Arrow got a bit of a buff, so this is good for bleed builds, right? We're using Snaring Arrow to make the enemy seem like it's moving when it's not. Explosive Trap. Now, this is another one that's very high on my League Star list. It gives you the extra smaller explosions on the gem. That's a 20% increase in damage, 20 to 25% increase in damage. That's very strong, and Explosive Trap is a good skill. So I'm very interested in starting Explosive Trap. I just wanted to see kind of how the builds are made and obviously see all the Transfigure gems. But this is a very nice change here. We don't have to have that enchant. It's fast. It gets going easily with not that much gear. It's a very interesting choice. Frenzy seems crazy where you're getting 2% more attack damage and attack speed per Frenzy charge. You can get up to like 10, 11 charges in trade. That seems outrageous. That's a lot of increased or more attack damage and attack speed. Infernal Blow, a skill that I've tried to make work so many times. It's so difficult because the skill does no damage, and the way that it works mechanically is also not that good. Now they're giving you an extra 5% per damage per charge, which is nice. So the enchant, I think, only give you an extra 5%, but this is giving you 10% of damage per charge. But is that enough? I don't think it is. I don't think that's enough. I think it needs a base damage increase and maybe a mechanic rework. I think trying to get to 6 stacks in like a second or second and a half is like pretty tough. Pretty tough for the way that you scale this build, right? If the way that you're scaling this build. Penance Brand got completely reworked. I don't really know how Penance Brand worked previously, and I'm not really sure how it works now. It looks now you just put the brand on an enemy. Once it reaches maximum stages, it explodes and does all of this damage, and that's a good thing. So it looks like it's a better skill for it now. Perforate got a bit of a nerf. You're not getting 2 extra spikes when you change your stance. However, you are getting 2 spikes as the quality. However, you are losing 2 spikes from a Helm enchant. So you're losing 2 spikes, I think. Puncture, you get more damage with bleeding instead of faster bleeding. Is that a good thing? Again, you really value faster bleeds, so I'm not sure if this is a good buff or if it's a buff at all. Some changes to Reap. You're losing the extra blood charge, but you're getting more damage per blood. And then for, obviously everyone knows about the Righteous Fire changes. They removed the base damage from Righteous Fire, and now it's like a life scaling build. Is that good or not? All you Righteous Fire heads, let me know. I don't know. It doesn't seem good to me. Steel skills are completely reworked, which is a good thing in my opinion. No more Call of Steel shenanigans. We'll see how strong they actually are. 40% increase in Pale Effect is pretty nice also as a quality. Siege Ballista got a massive buff where you're getting 5% increased attack speed per maximum totem. You get like 20 totems for this build. That's a huge, huge buff for Siege Ballista. This is your cheap boss killer right here. If you just want to fucking just murder some bosses as quickly and as cheap as possible, Siege Ballista seems like it's the skill to go with. They ruined Spark. I don't know. Some people are saying it's fine. I don't think it is. This skill doesn't seem like very fun to use anymore. It does almost no damage. Storm Call is kind of interesting because you're losing Divergent Storm Call, which reduced the skill effect duration. And I don't know how that's going to affect the Storm Call builds. So this is something that I'm really interested in because I really wanted to play this skill. And I was thinking about playing it in this league. But without that reduced duration, is it possible to make it feel instant? I'm not sure. But you don't have that divergence anymore. And it's just, there's no reduced duration. Unless they have a transfigured gem that does that. Yeah, we just don't know. This seems like a really big nerf to Storm Call and how it's played in the current PoE time. And yeah, there's a few other ones like Unearth now has the 30% life as the enchant, the life enchant as the quality now. So that's actually scaled by quality, which is really good. So the minions that you unearth are gonna have a shitload of life now. That could be a better way to, I don't know, spawn corpses or something. And you know, Vortex got pretty hit pretty bad too. But and then there's a few other things I want to talk about before we get out of here. Ashes removed its reservation efficiency, so they changed some of the way the uniques are worked, which I think is a good thing. I think changing uniques is one of the best ways to change the meta. They changed Ashes so it doesn't have reservation efficiency anymore. They nerfed the fuck out of Heat Shiver. Thank God. Now every cold build doesn't have to run a Heat Shiver. This is a very big nerf. This is a very big nerf. Gain 30% of cold damage as extra fire damage against frozen enemy when it used to be 100. Okay? That's a huge nerf. Replica Dragon's Fang is still pretty good. It just doesn't have the base stuff like as high as it was. Calms got a nerf. Now, instead of 100 life recovery per second, it's 300 life recovery per second. That's a big change. So you need to much more invest into life recovery per second from regeneration for Calms to work. This got a buff in terms of like the fire damage that it does to you. It's less now. I don't know how useful that is. It could be. I need to play around with it. I've never used these boots in my life, so it could be fun now. And then now this is the big one, Ralakash. So many builds use Ralakash. It's insane the amount of builds that use Ralakash and Patience boots. This is a huge change, okay? So when I first saw this, I was like, oh wait, maybe it's just saying that you just don't have to worry about moving, or it's just gonna give you max charges. No, that is not how this is going to work. At least I don't think so. The way that I'm reading it, it now just counts as you having max charges. For all the charges, mind you, right? So it looks like it doesn't give you charges at all. It looks like you have to generate charges. And you have to generate all the charges if you want to have the benefit of all those charges. So essentially, you're just counting as having max charges, but you don't actually have max charges. So say you have max frenzy charges, right? You have 8 frenzy charges, and you put on Ralakash, you're expecting to have now 8 power charges and 8 endurance charges. No, my friend, you will just still have 8 frenzy charges, but your skills that consume charges or that look at the charges in terms of to give you like damage increases, they will see that you have max endurance charges and max power charges, but you actually won't have those. Like, you're not going to get the increased critical damage from the max power charges. You're not going to get all of the res and all of the damage mitigation from the endurance charges. You're just going to have the stats from the max frenzy charges that you have. So this is a very, very, very big change if this is true. This is a massive change to the meta if this is true, which is something that you need to think about if you're just like, oh, now I can just use them whenever. No, now you have to generate charges for one. It doesn't just fucking give you charges when you stand still. You have to generate the charges, and you're losing probably some charges. Like, I don't think all of those Ralakash builds are, aren't using the endurance charges or aren't using the power charges. You're gonna have to figure out how to work around that, because this is a big, big change. Interesting, right? Interesting change there. I like it. I think all of the changes look good so far, and there's a few other changes, and there's some item changes as well. Like the Boom Mace now has cooldown recovery time of 1.4, which is, I don't know, I've never played with the boom mace. Could be fun. And then everyone's talking about the Simplex amulet, you know, being the 100% increase explicit modifier stuff. I don't know. We'll see how useful that really is. Yeah, overall, I like everything that I'm seeing from Affliction. I think it's going to be a good league. I'm 10 for 10 in terms of like predicting leagues now. I knew Tota was going to be a shit league, and it was a shit league. I knew that Crucible was going to be a shit league, and it was a shit league. I know when a league is good, this is a good league. There's so much to dig into, at least for the way that I play. I don't care about like currency grinding and just like, you know, getting to the end game and farming it 100 billion times as fast as I can. I don't really care about that. I like playing with new things, getting into the sandbox, collecting items, playing more of an SSF focused stuff since I am in SSF most of the time. That's kind of how I like to play. And in my opinion, the way that I like to play, this league looks amazing. It looks fantastic. I love all the changes. And mind you, we haven't even seen the Transfigured gems. We still have hundreds of gems to go over. All these new gems that they're adding to the game, we still have to go over them. So there's so much meat here to dig into for this next league that I'm just pumped. And I can't wait to see all of the cool stuff that people are making. And stay tuned on the channel because I'm going to be going through all of the different stuff that we do in terms of this league. All right, peace.